the recitation of the expedient means, and lifespan chapters. In the letter you sent by messenger, you say that you used to recite one chapter of the Lotus Sutra every day, completing the entire sutra in the space of 28 days, but that now you read the Medicine King chapter once a day. You ask if you should simply read each chapter in turn, as you were originally doing. As for the Lotus Sutra, one may recite the entire sutra of 28 chapters in 8 volumes every day, or one may recite only one volume, or one chapter, or one verse, or one phrase, or one word, or one may simply chant the Daimoku, Nam MyoHo Renge Kyo, only once a day, or chant it only once in the course of a lifetime, or hear someone else chant it only once in a lifetime and rejoice in the hearing, or rejoice in hearing the voice of someone else rejoice in the hearing, and so on in this manner to the 50th hearer. And if one were to be at the end, even if one's faith were weak and one's sense of rejoicing diluted like the frailty of a child of 2 or 3, or the inability of a cow or horse to distinguish before from after, the blessings one would gain would be 100,000, 10,000, million times greater than those gained by persons of keen faculties and superior wisdom who study other sutras, persons such as Shariputra, Maudgalyayana, Manjushri, and Maitreya, who had committed to memory the entire texts of the various sutras. We find this mentioned in both the Lotus Sutra and the 60 volumes of commentary by Tian-te and Miao Lo. Thus the sutra states concerning these blessings, even the Buddha wisdom could never finish calculating their extent. Not even the wisdom of the Buddha can fathom the blessings such a person will obtain. The Buddha wisdom is so marvelous that it knows even the number of raindrops that fall in this major world system during a period, for instance, of 7 days or twice 7 days. And yet we read that the blessings acquired by one who recites no more than a single word of the Lotus Sutra are the one thing it cannot fathom. How, then, could ordinary people like ourselves, who have committed grave offenses, possibly understand these blessings? However, it is now some 2200 years since the thus come one's passing. For many years, the 5 impurities have flourished, and good deeds in any connection are rare. Though a person may do good, in the course of doing a single good deed he accumulates 10 evil ones, so that in the end, for the sake of a small good, he commits great evil. And yet, in his heart, he prides himself on having practiced great good. Such are the times we live in. Moreover, you were born in the remote land of Japan, a tiny island country in the east separated by 200,000 ri of mountains and seas from the country of the thus come one's birth. And you are a woman, burdened by the 5 obstacles and bound by the 3 obediences. How indescribably wonderful, therefore, that in spite of these hindrances you have been able to take faith in the Lotus Sutra. Even the wise or the learned, such as those who have pored over all the sacred teachings propounded by the Buddha in the course of his lifetime, and who have mastered both the exoteric and esoteric doctrines, are these days abandoning the Lotus Sutra and instead reciting the Nebutsu. What good karma you must have formed in the past, then, to have been born a person able to recite even so much as a verse or a phrase of the Lotus Sutra. When I read over your letter, I felt as though my eyes were beholding something rarer than the Udumbara flower, something even scarcer than the one-eyed turtle encountering a floating log with a hollow in it that fits him exactly. Moved to heartfelt admiration, I thought that I would like to add just one word or one expression of my own rejoicing, endeavoring in this way to enhance your merit. I fear, however, that, as clouds darken the moon or as dust defiles a mirror, My brief and clumsy attempts at description will only serve to cloak and obscure the incomparably wonderful blessings you will receive, and the thought pains me. Yet, in response to your question, I could scarcely remain silent. Please understand that I am merely joining my one drop to the rivers and the oceans, or adding my torch to the sun and the moon, hoping in this way to increase even slightly the volume of the water or the brilliance of the light. First of all, when it comes to the Lotus Sutra, you should understand that, whether one recites all 8 volumes, or only one volume, one chapter, one verse, one phrase, or simply the Daimoku, or title, the blessings are the same. It is like the water of the great ocean, a single drop of which contains water from all the countless streams and rivers, or like the wish-granting jewel, which, though only a single jewel, can shower all kinds of treasures upon the wisher. And the same is true of 100, 1,000, 10,000, or 1,000,000 such drops of water or such jewels. A single character of the Lotus Sutra is like such a drop of water or such a jewel, and the 100,000,000 characters are like 100,000,000 such drops or jewels. On the other hand, a single character of the other sutras, or the name of any of the various Buddhas, is like one drop of the water of a particular stream or river, or like only one stone from a particular mountain or a particular sea. One such drop does not contain the water of countless other streams and rivers, and one such stone does not possess the virtues that inhere in innumerable other kinds of stones. Therefore, when it comes to the Lotus Sutra, it is praiseworthy to recite any chapter you have placed your trust in, whichever chapter that may be. Generally speaking, among all the sacred teachings of the Thus Come One, none has ever been known to contain falsehoods. Yet when we consider the Buddhist teachings more deeply, we find that even among the Thus Come One's golden words there exist various categories such as Mahayana and Hinayana, provisional and true teachings, and exoteric and esoteric doctrines. These distinctions arise from the sutras themselves, and accordingly, we find that they are roughly outlined in the commentaries of the various scholars and teachers. To state the essence of the matter, among the doctrines propounded by Shakyamuni Buddha in the 50 or more years of his teaching life, those put forward in the first 40 or more years are of a questionable nature. We can say so because the Buddha himself clearly stated in the Immeasurable Meanings Sutra, "In these more than 40 years, I have not yet revealed the truth." And in the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha himself proclaims concerning its every word and phrase, honestly discarding expedient means, "I will preach only the unsurpassed way." Moreover, many treasures Buddha sprang up from the earth to add his testimony, declaring, "The Lotus Sutra of the Wonderful Law, all that you Shakyamuni Buddha have expounded is the truth." And the Buddhas of the 10 directions all gathered at the assembly where the Lotus Sutra was being preached and extended their tongues to give further support to the assertion that not a single word of the Lotus Sutra is false. It was as though a great king, his consort, and his most venerable subjects had all with one accord given their word. Suppose that a man or a woman who has recited even a single word of the Lotus Sutra were to be dragged down by the unfathomably heavy karma of the 10 evil acts, the 5 cardinal sins, or the 4 major offenses, and fall into the evil paths. Even if the sun and moon should never again emerge from the east, even if the great earth itself should turn over, even if the tides of the great ocean should cease to ebb and flow, even if broken stones are made whole, and even if the waters of the streams and rivers cease to flow into the ocean, no woman who believes in the Lotus Sutra could ever be dragged down by worldly faults and fall into the evil paths. If a woman who believes in the Lotus Sutra should ever fall into the evil paths as a result of jealousy or ill temper or because of excessive greed, then the thus come one Shakyamuni, the Buddha many treasures, and the Buddhas of the 10 directions would immediately be guilty of breaking the vow they have upheld over the span of countless kalpas never to tell a lie. Their offense would be even greater than the wild falsehoods and deceptions of Devadatta or the outrageous lies told by Kokalika. But how could such a thing ever happen? Thus a person who embraces the Lotus Sutra is absolutely assured of its blessings. On the other hand, even if one does not commit a single evil deed throughout one's entire lifetime, and observes the 5 precepts, the 8 precepts, the 10 precepts, the 10 good precepts, the 250 precepts, the 500 precepts, or countless numbers of precepts, even if one learns all the other sutras by heart, makes offerings to all the other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and accumulates immeasurable merit, if one but fails to put one's faith in the Lotus Sutra, or if one has faith in it, but considers that it ranks on the same level as the other sutras and the teachings of the other Buddhas, or if one recognizes its superiority, but constantly engages in other religious disciplines, practicing the Lotus Sutra only from time to time, or if one associates on friendly terms with priests of the Nebutsu, who do not believe in the Lotus Sutra but slander it, or if one thinks that those who insist the Lotus Sutra does not suit the people's capacity in the latter age are guilty of no fault, then all the merit of the countless good acts one has performed throughout one's life will suddenly vanish. Moreover, the blessings resulting from one's practice of the Lotus Sutra will for some time be obscured, and one will fall into the great citadel of the Avicii hell as surely as rain falls from the sky or rocks tumble down from the peaks into the valleys. Even if one has committed the 10 evil acts or the 5 cardinal sins, so long as one does not turn one's back on the Lotus Sutra, one will without doubt be reborn in the Pure Land and attain Buddhahood. On the other hand, we read in the sutra that, even if one observes the precepts, embraces all the other sutras, and believes in the various Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, if one fails to take faith in the Lotus Sutra, one is certain to fall into the evil paths. Limited though my ability may be, when I observe the situation in the world these days, it seems to me that the great majority of both lay believers and members of the clergy are guilty of slandering the correct teaching. But to return to your question. As I said before, though no chapter of the Lotus Sutra is negligible, among the entire 28 chapters, the Expedient Means chapter and the Lifespan chapter are particularly outstanding. The remaining chapters are all in a sense the branches and leaves of these 2 chapters. Therefore, for your regular recitation, I recommend that you practice reading the prose sections of the Expedient Means and Lifespan chapters. In addition, it might be well if you wrote out separate copies of these sections. The remaining 26 chapters are like the shadow that follows one's body or the value inherent in a jewel. If you recite the Lifespan and Expedient Means chapters, then the remaining chapters will naturally be included even though you do not recite them. It is true that the Medicine King and Devadatta chapters deal specifically with women's attainment of Buddhahood or rebirth in the Pure Land. But the Devadatta chapter is a branch and leaf of the Expedient Means chapter, and the Medicine King chapter is a branch and leaf of the Expedient Means and the Lifespan chapters. Therefore, you should regularly recite these 2 chapters, the Expedient Means and Lifespan chapters. As for the remaining chapters, you may turn to them from time to time when you have a moment of leisure. Also in your letter, you say that 3 times each day you bow in reverence to the 7 characters of the title, and that each day you repeat the words Namu Ichija Myoten 10,000 times. At times of menstruation, however, you refrain from reading the sutra. You ask if it is unseemly to bow in reverence to the 7 characters or to recite Namu Ichija Myoten without facing the Lotus Sutra, or if you should refrain from doing even that during your menstrual period. You also ask how many days following the end of your period you should wait before resuming recitation of the sutra. This is a matter that concerns all women and about which they always inquire. In past times, too, we find many persons addressing themselves to this question concerning women. But because the sacred teachings put forward by the Buddha in the course of his lifetime do not touch upon this point, no one has been able to offer any clear scriptural proof upon which to base an answer. In my own study of the sacred teachings, though I find clear prohibitions on certain days of the month against the impurity of things like meat or wine, the 5 spicy foods, or sexual acts, for instance, I have never come across any passage in the sutras or treatises that speaks of avoidances connected with menstruation. While the Buddha was in the world, many women in their prime became nuns and devoted themselves to the Buddha's teachings, but they were never shunned on account of their menstrual period. Judging from this, I would say that menstruation does not represent any kind of impurity coming from an external source. It is simply a characteristic of the female sex, a phenomenon related to the perpetuation of the seed of birth and death. Or in another sense, it might be regarded as a kind of chronically recurring illness. In the case of feces and urine, though these are substances produced by the body, so long as one observes cleanly habits, there are no special prohibitions to be observed concerning them. Surely the same must be true of menstruation. That is why, I think, we hear of no particular rules for avoidance pertaining to the subject in India or China. Japan, however, is a land of the gods. And it is the way of this country that, although the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have manifested themselves here in the form of gods, strangely enough, in many cases they do not conform to the sutras and treatises. Nevertheless, if one goes against them, one will incur actual punishment. When we scrutinize the sutras and treatises with care, we find that there is a teaching about a precept known as following the customs of the region that corresponds to this. The meaning of this precept is that, so long as no seriously offensive act is involved, then even if one were to depart to some slight degree from the teachings of Buddhism, it would be better to avoid going against the manners and customs of the country. This is a precept expounded by the Buddha. It appears that some wise men who are unaware of this point express extreme views, saying such things as, because the gods are demon-like beings they are unworthy of reverence, and that this has offended many lay supporters. If so, since the gods of Japan have in most cases desired that prohibitions be observed during the period of menstruation, perhaps people born in this country should seriously observe such prohibitions. However, I do not think that such prohibitions should interfere with a woman's daily religious devotions. I would guess that it is persons who never had any faith in the Lotus Sutra to begin with who tell you otherwise. They are trying to think of some way to make you stop reciting the sutra, but they do not feel that they can come right out and advise you to cast the sutra aside. So they use the pretext of bodily impurity to try to distance you from it. They intimidate you by telling you that, if you continue your regular devotions during a period of impurity, you will be treating the sutra with disrespect. In this way they mean to trick you into incurring an offense. I hope you will keep in mind all that I have said regarding this matter. On this basis, even if your menstrual period should last as long as 7 days, if you feel so inclined, dispense with the reading of the sutra and simply recite Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Also, when making your devotions, you need not bow facing the sutra. On the other hand, if suddenly you should feel, for example, the approach of death, then even if you are eating fish or fowl, if you are able to read the sutra, you should do so, and likewise chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Needless to say, the same principle applies during your period of menstruation. Though reciting the words Namu Ichija Myoten amounts to the same thing, it would be better if you just chanted Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, as Bodhisattva Vasubandhu and the great teacher Tayante did. There are specific reasons why I say this. Respectfully, Nichiren.